Hey Joe, we're live.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Business Board, and I'm pleased to welcome members of the press and public who are able to join this virtual meeting online. If members experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, perish the thought, please refresh your connection in the first instance, and if it becomes apparent that we've lost any members and we are no longer quorum for the meeting, it may be necessary for us to adjourn, but we will do everything that we can to avoid that. So first of all, I'd like to begin by calling the names of all members of the Business Board in alphabetical order to establish their presence for the record. So Mayor Nick Johnson.
Present. Al, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, sir. Councillor Anna Smith. No. Vic Annals. Tina Barsby.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Tina. Belinda Clark. Mike Hurd. Andy Neely. Andy, I've seen you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Rebecca Stevens.
Yeah, hi Al, everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy Williams.
Yeah, hi Al.
And myself, Al Williams. Al Kingsley. So we are quorate based on numbers. We have a couple that hopefully will be joining us late, and I believe we have one apologies for absence in Nitin Patel. Could you confirm if there's anybody else that we need to record as the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. No, we've got apologies, like you said, from Nitin. Mike Hurd says he's running late. That's all we've had.
Okay, thank you. And this is an opportunity for members to declare any pecuniary interests or any other conflicts of interest. Is there anything any members would like to declare as conflicts for this meeting or agenda? No? Okay, excellent. Then we will move on. So agenda item 1.2 today is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of September 2023. Can I ask whether any members disagree with the accuracy of the minutes? No, good. Okay, so I see there's no objections, so we will take that as carried. Do officers have any other updates to report in regard to the action log for those minutes? No. Okay. So
No
we will. Domenico.
No updates, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for confirming. Okay, so we're moving at quite a pace already. We're at 1.3 already. And an exciting one to have on the agenda, a very positive one, I might add, which is the appointment of new private sector members to the Business Board. So the first report is for us to approve the appointment of the new private sector members. I am delighted, genuinely, to confirm we've appointed 5 new members, which we will hopefully be welcoming them at an informal meeting, and then they will be at the formal public meeting of the Business Board in January. For the record, the 5 new members are Katie Davis, Managing Director at Shift Momentum, Sam Bakri, Executive Chairman of Celex Oncology, Charlotte Horriban, who is the Chief Executive of the Cambridgeshire Chambers of Commerce, Barnaby Perks, Director of Cambridge Ignition, and somebody who will be familiar to all of us already for his great contribution today, Andy Williams, Director of Andy Williams Consultancy, who has been a co-opted member of this board already for a couple of years. I would also, much as unfortunately she's not here at the moment, would like to take the time to thank Belinda Clark for all of her contributions to the Business Board since she joined us in January last year. She's been an excellent member of the team, but unfortunately this will be Belinda's last meeting as she steps away at the end of the month, although she absolutely has extended her willingness to engage and support the Business Board activity on relevant topics going forward in a slightly more independent capacity. Could I ask you, Domenico, is there anything else you'd like to add from the report before we open it up for any questions?
Just to clarify the recruitment process, so just so the board is aware, we opened the recruitment in September, we closed in October, and we had a total of 16 applicants for the roles available. We progressed 8 to interview, and as you've clearly set out, Chair, we are recommending the appointment of 5 of those. Just to say that the new members will be inducted over the next month or so, and their first meeting that they will be attending will be in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the board members? These are recommendations just to note. Rebecca.
Thanks, Al. I just wanted to ask about the numbers, because in the report it says there are 6 vacancies, 7 with Belinda, and we are appointing 5 now, which by my rudimentary maths means we still have 2 vacancies. What's the plan?
That is a very good question. And without wishing to cut across Domenico, who has been very ably coordinating this, we obviously recruited candidates that we felt would add best value to our collective of the board. And our intention is once we've brought those on board, we will look in the new year in January to undertake a campaign to fill those remaining 2 vacancies. It will give us an opportunity in the meantime to refresh our skills matrix and make sure we're clear on where we've got any specific areas of any gaps in terms of experience on the board. So the aim absolutely is, Rebecca, to make sure that we get to full complement, and as part of our broader plans on extending the role of the business board in supporting the different committees across the combined authority. I'm really keen that we've got maximum person power to be able to support on that.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? And I see Mike has joined us. Mike, you're very welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, a little bit late. Driving back from Essex.
I think we can all forgive you. We'll take that as an action point as well. Mike is forgiven. As I said, these are recommendations just to note. So can we all agree that this has been noted and look forward to these new faces joining us in the very near future? Good. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 2.1, which is the forward plan. That is very much a case of just providing everyone, as you will have had in the pack, a summary of the forward plan, but also extending a note to all members of the committee. Can I just remind you, if anyone's got their microphone unmuted, just to mute for me so we don't get any feedback. Thank you. Just to note that as part of our linking more closely with activities happening across our committees, if any business board members are aware of any topics that they feel the business board need to be discussing, or any opportunities where perhaps we need to have individual specialized sessions, please do flag those with Domenico so we can look to update and adapt the forward plan as we move on in the year ahead. I did say we were moving at a fair pace. We are up to item 2.2, which is the business board's chair update. I appreciate this is the item that you're almost looking forward to for the meeting. In all seriousness, I'm really keen that we have more updates in general. One of this will be linked to timings of the individual committees. So you will all be familiar, and I think it's always helpful from the public to be aware that as a business board, our role has been refined. We've been having a very collegiate and constructive work on the governance and structures of how the business board feeds into different committees. And alongside that, we want to try and make sure that there is more of a feedback loop in terms of the support from individual individual members who are supporting the thematic committees in the combined authority. There will be a need for us to consider timings moving forward, because what I'm keen to have as part of our update at the start of our meetings here is to get some feedback from members who've attended some of those thematic committees, so that before we discuss topics, whether it's on transport or skills or whatever the topic may be, we've also got some insights of the key discussions that have been happening within those committees. Now, I understand that most of those committees are post this meeting, and should Vic have an opportunity to arrive in due course to this meeting, it'd be helpful to get an update from him on the skills committee. We have a fairly focused agenda today, but moving forward, I'm really keen that we can have that cross-pollination between those committees. So again, please, anybody who has a role on the individual committees, please make a note to bring perhaps back a quick 2-3 minute summary of the highlights for future meetings. And of course, alongside that, with our new members, we'll be looking at their skills to see how they can support across committees as well. The other part, which is part of the refinement from feedback from business board members also, is an ongoing process to try and signpost in the content that we have within our agenda packs and information packs for each of these meetings, better where appropriate, better in a constructive sense, signposting of where topics we're discussing have already been discussed or are linked to some of those other strands that we have within our broader combined authority activities. And again, that's to ensure that from a first read, we have clarity that this links into other strategic planning or other committee discussions as well. I hope that will feed in as we move together as a business board to our plans of action for the year ahead, to allow us to shape where there are projects, whether it be for economic investment or focus on supporting skills, where we can be much more minded to review projects and opportunities that potentially have impact across some of our sector strategies and our key priorities, rather than considering them in isolation. To date, in my new role as chair, and I fully accept that I am very much on a learning curve, quite a steep learning curve. I think I've kept a record that I'm just close to 40 meetings that I've had already, meeting across the sector with lots of different stakeholders. And alongside that, whilst that journey is by no means complete, and I'm sure never will be, I'm also keen, once we get our new additional members to the business board, that will have an opportunity to reflect and signpost individual business board member skills, so that they can also be connected with relevant groups that are looking for insights. And that will also support the sterling work that Jodie and the team have done in terms of our governance, in making sure that we are representing and reflecting the widest possible business voice back within our committees. That's quite a lot of a summary, but I wanted to just put that out there because I think it's really, really important that we make sure that we're aligned as broadly as we can within the combined authority and externally. I'm going to pause there because I just wanted to see if there's any opportunity for any business board members to either comment on that, reflect on that, or think whether there are any other areas where they would like to flag in terms of how we engage with stakeholders. I will take that as either stunned silence or complete agreement. So either way, thank you folks for that. That's, I say, hopefully Vic will join us and we can perhaps touch on what activities have happened at Skills in due course. But once we have, I believe, just for the benefit of those outside the business board, we are hoping to have a session in the coming month where business board members collectively, along with our new business board members, will have an opportunity to meet, and we can use that as an opportunity to perhaps streamline and focus on some of our forward plan focus and the areas that we want to really target in on as a business board. So that's something I hope we can bring back to the next meeting as a summary. I shall stop talking now and move us swiftly on to agenda item 2.3, which is the CPCA Director update. So I'm going to hand over to you, Richard, for an update, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Al. And I'm going to be equally brief. Unfortunately, I tested positive for COVID at the tail end of last week, so slightly under the weather at the moment. So just trying to win a bit of sympathy before I talk. So a few things to mention. On the national side, just wanted to touch on a few things that have been going on, really. And as we speak, things are changing in government at the moment, but we're hopeful of having a meeting tomorrow, if he's still in the same post that he's in now, with Michael Gove, to talk about the work we've been doing in relation to the level 4 framework and devolution, and that is still moving forwards. So there is a meeting tomorrow with all of the Metro mayors and Michael Gove to talk about progress in relation to that framework, that hopefully, I think it will be quite low key, but hopefully should become part of the announcement in the autumn statement on the 22nd of November. So clearly an opportunity for us moving forwards in terms of what that might mean. Equally, I think we saw at the conference season, we saw some mention made about various things in terms of the government's announcements in relation to transport and the North Manifesto and so on and so forth. So I think there was, again, some relatively good news there about Ely Junction and one or two other things that we've been lobbying for as part of the work that we've been doing as a combined authority in relation to the Rail Summit and everything else. So again, a lot of work's been going on from the Mayor and his office in terms of trying to consolidate and embed down on those announcements to make sure that we get as much of that over the line as possible before the election intervenes. So obviously, I'm very aware that on the Laura Kornsberg show, the Secretary of State did announce that we would see a commitment to that project moving forwards in full. So hopefully we'll be able to consolidate that between now and then. So that was just something else that I wanted to draw our attention to. Equally, as part of the work that we're doing on life sciences, we met as part of the Life Sciences Forum and the network of science parks in South Cambridge with Peter Freeman, and we had a really good session with Peter Freeman talking at that session. And I also did a presentation in relation to the role of the combined authority moving forwards, and kind of sort of pointing out that the Cambridge 2040 and its narrative very much does align with some of the things that we've been saying as a combined authority for some time now, in terms of what came out of Spear 1, what came out in terms of the importance of Cambridge and the wider area, in terms of the life sciences, and in terms of the infrastructure issues, the water scarcity, the energy, and all of these things that are really important for us to deal with. So again, it was a very useful conversation with Peter Freeman. Again, in the autumn statement, we are expecting some announcement to be made about Cambridge 2040. Government have commissioned quite a lot of work in relation to it. We don't know what Peter Freeman's going to say, but I do recall that Michael Gove, in his housing speech at the end of July, did make very clear that there was going to be some sort of long-term delivery vehicle announced, and I'm still very mindful that that is something that might emerge in one form or another. So again, that's something for us as a business board to be very cognizant of. And then I wanted to draw attention also to some work that's come out, just thinking about the next general election and positioning ourselves for that. I think it's really important. We're doing quite a lot of work in terms of what are our priorities, what are our propositions that we might want to take forward. And the sooner, I know, Al, you've been involved in some of those conversations. It would be good to increasingly get business board members involved in some of those conversations so that we can move those things forward. I think what also came out was a piece of research that was done by King's College in London, which contains about 93 different interviews with ex-prime ministers, with civil servants, with key people that have been involved in regional policy over recent years. And the conclusion of all of that work seems to suggest that the mayoral combined authority is very much a model that's here to stay, that devolution is very much here to stay, and that, it seems to me to be something, if members haven't seen that work, it's something that we could certainly circulate. But it's very important, I think, in terms of signalling to us that the work that we do between now and the next general election is really important in getting ourselves into a state of readiness for those opportunities. And then a couple of things more locally. Some of you may have been involved in the climate summit earlier, towards the end of last week, that seemed to go down very well. We're also doing work. We're doing work with both the Oxcam partnership and with DBT in terms of investment pipelines. And that work is moving forwards. And equally, we've also agreed to take a pavilion at UK Reef. So in May in Leeds, next May, we will be visibly present in and around Leeds for the UK Reef Estates Conference. It's a massive opportunity for us. All of the combined authorities attend. It's attended by lots of investors, lots of occupiers, government as well. So a real opportunity for us between now and then to really get our pitch right in terms of what we want to take forward as a combined authority. And again, it'd be really important to have a business board presence at UK Reef in May. We've also been doing some work with UK Creative, and we had a very useful engagement session with UK Creative, and we've agreed to work up a strategic initiative with UK Creative and DCMS. So I think that moving forwards, again, that will be really helpful in terms of positioning ourselves for further devolution in the next general election. And we're also now getting up to speed in terms of setting up the new economy team that was agreed previously by this board, in terms of appointing the staff to support our 4 key sector strategies: our inward investment, trade and investment strategy, and our innovation plan as well. So that recruitment is starting to take place. I also wanted to mention, in terms of regional innovation launch pads, that we were successful in securing an agri-tech and food tech launch pad with partners in the wider east of England. I think that's worth about 7.5 million. So we're now taking that forward. And also, just very quickly, that we've now completed the closure of Growthworks. We've also are pitching in for the Business Growth and Social Investment Fund, and we're also made quite a lot of progress on phase 2 of our Market Towns programme. And you'll be pleased to know that's it from me. Thank you.
Richard, thank you. As everybody I know is aware, there's an awful lot on the go, and some really positive work that's on the go. I think one of the key ones that I know members of the business board will resonate with is bringing together some of those opportunities and getting an opportunity as the business board to bring those together into a more cohesive plan, particularly on some of those larger projects that you're focusing on. There's been pretty much complete consensus in terms of support around recent planning on transport and some of how that infrastructure will unlock, not just in terms of business, but I think also linking into skills as well as our climate reduction. So there's some good overlaps, but I do think it's the next step for us, as we've discussed, is to try and bring business board members together, particularly with our new cohort, so that we can be really clear on the plans that we want to support, and where appropriate, the evidence and research that we want to initiate that sits around that. And I think that's something that's really a priority. It will be obviously shared in due course for this business board as well as the other committees to talk about medium-term financial plan. And I think that's another opportunity for us to develop and shape in terms of business board priorities as well. Are there any questions from business board members they'd like to ask Richard? Andy.
Thanks, Al, and thanks, Richard, for the update. It was very helpful. I was interested in what constraints you face or the combined authority faces in terms of engaging with opposition MPs at the moment in light of pending general election. I mean, clearly there's a lot of people trying to talk to all different parties on the run-up to general election, but are you able to engage with them? And if so, are you getting much traction?
So we have been engaging, obviously, with all the parties during the party conference season, and I'm very aware of, with I've seen a number of Fabian Society papers, for example, that relate very much to where the Labour Party is going and the direction of travel in relation to that. We've obviously picked up on the announcements that were made in relation to new settlements and housing, and in relation to industrial policy, and in relation to fiscal devolution, and so on and so forth. So been having some conversations. We've been utilising our networks through our board members and wider to try and work through exactly where the opposition is in relation to certain things. I think there's still some work to be done in relation to the detail of all of that, because there isn't a lot of detail in the policy at the moment that's coming through. So the more help that we can have with that, the better. But we have been in engaging, as much as we can, and trying to pick up, whether it's to do with tech education or whether it's to do with, whether mayoral combined authorities will continue. What will the balance be between local authorities and mayoral combined authorities, and so on and so forth. But anything that board members can help us with in relation to that would be extremely well received.
So it might just be worth colleagues thinking about when they have opportunities to engage with or host visits from members of either side of the political fence, actually making sure the business boards are aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's Andy Williams and then Mike Hurd.
Just a couple of small things really. So first, an observation. I think Richard coming to the Life Science Place Forum with Peter Freeman was useful, and I think it certainly gave Peter Freeman a good idea of the sort of strategic direction the combined authority is going. So I think that's a very positive step, Richard, and thank you for doing that. On a level of detail, something completely different. You talked about the wind down of GrowthWorks. I know we're coming on to GrowthWorks as an agenda item, but I did see a comment on there that one of the things they were concerned about, as you always would be at this stage of a process, is ensuring the combined authority is putting sufficient oomph into a smooth transition of that to the combined authority. Can you give a little bit more detail of what we're doing? I think it's a second agenda item to them coming and tell us how they're doing. It'd be useful to get ahead of that, how you're seeing that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we've done all the sort of technical stuff around TUPE, and we're taking on staff as part of bringing that work back in house. But there's very much a view, and I think it's shared right across our constituent members in the local authorities, that we need to collaborate much more as local authorities. We set up a new economic development panel quite deliberately to strengthen relationships between the combined authority itself and officers within the combined authority and the individual local authorities. So we're working much more closely with the likes of Peterborough and East Cambridge and so on and so forth, so that there's more a more sort of team Cambridgeshire approach. So very much wanting to do that, but I think that the issue for me around GrowthWorks was we'd outsourced project management and we'd outsourced delivery to such an extent that although we were receiving the numbers back, we were not really on top of the interventions that were being made on our behalf in the way that other combined authorities are. And I think the balance was not quite right in terms of having enough in-house capability and capacity to enable things to happen, to at least be coordinated. And I think the life sciences one is a good example of that, where we are funding the forum and we're supporting the forum and we are involved in the strategy, but do we really have enough capacity and capability to follow through on the action plans and the deliverables and making things actually happen on the ground? And I think that's where I'd really like to see things change, that we have a bit more capacity in-house to make things happen on the ground, that there are interventions that we're clearly responsible for, like the University of Peterborough intervention, which is a well-received one in DLUC, because they can clearly see the combined authority, has helped draw down the Luff bid, has helped put in the capacity and capability to make it happen on the ground. And I think we would get more, we'd be seen as being more credible if we were doing more of that sort of work than actually outsourcing a lot of work, even if some of that outsourcing was resulting in significant inward investment into the area. And I think that's what we must make sure that we don't lose, the benefits of the work that's gone on in terms of inward investment and everything else. We need to make sure that we don't lose those relationships, those opportunities, and that we keep that alive and well as part of the relationships that we build. But overall, we are, trying to grow the capacity and the capability, and the more that we can pitch to government to secure more, the better for all of us, moving forwards.
Thank you both. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Sure, it probably follows on a bit from that anyway, and possibly even part answered by that. But I had a meeting with Chris George during the week, and so I'm aware of some of the new staff being brought in and the sort of the movement over to the CPCA team. But I did want to ask about the inward investment, because that's one area where there's a real need for continuity. And I wasn't quite sure that was actually or who was actually overseeing that from the CPCA side, and how much was being done by the local authorities.
Do you want me to come back? Yeah. So we will make sure that there is that continuity, and if you're uncomfortable with that at the moment, then we'll act to make sure that we do follow through on that. But I think Steve and his team are very aware of that as an issue, and that we must make sure that we continue with the existing relationships and the existing opportunities that are out there. I've been around a lot in terms of inward investment, and there's different degrees to which there's all sorts of reasons why inward investment lands, as we all know. But we need to just make sure that we're very clear about the difference that we're making and the difference that our resources are making, however best we use those resources. But just because we're bringing the contract in-house doesn't mean that we don't continue to contract out particular pieces of work, or we draw on the expertise of particular individuals if those particular individuals and those particular routes to market are successful. So we would want to build on success, and that success that we've already seen in play. So we will do everything we can to make sure that happens.
Good, thank you. I wasn't uncomfortable, I just was ignorant. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you, Richard. I think that's really helpful, because we've touched on this before a little bit about perhaps narrowing a bit more of the focus from that original remit, but being much more key and focused in terms of sustaining momentum on the strands that we think are going to be most impactful and beneficial. And I'm really conscious of not really stealing the conversation from agenda item 3.2 that might likely come from that. So perhaps we can pick up on that, but I appreciate your clarification. Are there any other questions for Richard in terms of the topics he's covered? That's quite a broad remit, and I think definitely when we get business board members together to looking at some of our strategic priorities, I think would be obviously a really helpful opportunity, Richard, to unpick some of those strands with you in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the report that we're just noting. So we're going to move to part 3, the finance delivery and monitoring part of the agenda for today. First up, item 3.1 is budget and performance report. Bruna, you're going to be presenting this to us as always.
Yes, I will, and I even try to attempt to share something so we can all look at it together.
I am very grateful. That was one of our action points, was hopefully when we've
got
data to share it together.
I kept the same report as we had before, but just sharing it. Then if we want something different, we can think about. The problem is that I can't.
Certainly mindful of those who are viewing this meeting, that it's helpful to have the context in when we're talking about it.
Oh, thank you. Somebody magically did something very good for me. Sorry, I hope you can see it. See if I can make it slightly bigger and down.
We can see the full page.
Okay, yeah, I think it's the best we can do, I think. So can you read the number still, or is it too small?
It is quite small. Are you able to do it page width rather than page height?
That would be if I knew more about how to work Zoom, probably. Sorry, I'm very much a Teams person. I don't know. Anybody have an idea?
I think it's, without knowing what the document, I'm guessing if the document's as a PDF, it's about maximizing that to be page width.
Because there is actually, okay, let me have a look if it's the file itself. Because actually is part of our, oops, sorry, apologies. It feels like I could have done what to put that before. Okay, let's use another version of the file that is more friendly. It's the same file, of course, but it's the version that I have available for myself while I was writing it instead than the one that is published, just to say, because this one I should be able to manage it slightly better. Apologies about this. Please take us news or something else.
And welcome to Councillor Smith at the same time. Good to see you.
Good timing. Mm. Oh dear. Sorry about that.
I'm sure this is intentional, Bruna, just to build anticipation for us.
No, considering the content of the report, really, no, really. Thank you all, always very kind. Fortunately, is not. Okay. Better?
That's
Hopefully.
probably going to be a better chance for everyone to view that. Thank you. Yes, that's got the width there. So if you scroll through that, hopefully everyone will be able to see.
Sorry, try to use the one that was online, and actually that couldn't make it bigger. So as usual, so welcome all. Thank you for having me, and so I'm trying to walk you through the financial performance of the activities connected with the business board to the end of September 2023. So main activity this month. So as usual, we look at revenue, income, and expenditure. So first part of the part of it is the income. As you can see, income. I don't know. Can you see my?
Yes, we can.
My cursor moving. Perfect then. So actual to date, we got £3.3 million worth of income in. We don't have any budget, but simply because it was profiled later in the year, not because we weren't expecting it. As you can see, the 3.3 is only part of the 8.8 that we are going to have for the full year, that was budgeted for the full year. Now the number for this financial year is being reduced to 8.8 million, 8.1 million. And that's in the variance between the two numbers is 748, which the majority of it is £800,000 for the ERDF program. The ERDF program is we get funds in a year after that we have fulfilled the commitment of the program, and this is a legacy issue due to the idea that the program started late in the first place. We did a very good to catch up in the last period, but of course we couldn't catch up fully. Furthermore, this is pretty much, sorry, I minimize you so I can see the rest of the table. Okay. In relation, so this is everything in relation to income, really. As you can see, the line that we need to keep an eye on is the share prosperity funds. That is a large amount of money that we're going to get in this year. So in relation to expenditure, you can see that the actual expenditure today is 2.5 million. We budgeted the profile 4.3 million pounds of budget for the period up to September. That means we have a variance of just under 2 million pounds. The variance is, of course, related to our fund. Sorry, apologies for the. It's about growth services and the expenditure that come from this area. We know we keep an eye on growth work and growth services, growth activities. We are very conscious of it, and we're looking at it. But looking at the forecast and cash flow going for the last periods, we are fairly confident that we will get very close to it. if it's not going to be fully spent by the end of December, that when the program will be concluded. Other activities, really not too much to report. The variances from the forecast from actuaries, for forecast from full year budget is only £187,000, and that is because some of the costs for CRF that were originally planned for last year came in this year. We did, of course, get the revenue to match with it anyway, so it's just a matter of timing of when the expenditure came in. In relation to capital, instead, capital actual cost to date is 2.4 million. Budget to date is 4.2, that resolving a variance of 1.9. This is again the majority of the variance come from GovCo and the activities on equity funds that contain grant allocation to businesses in the area and inwards investment. Also, there are a couple of others like other organizations towards that we use to actually fund other research activity for the region, that is Illumina Accelerator and Star Cordon. Both of them are a bit behind still, but this is based on the way in which they procure and do call for notice throughout the year. So we are not concerned about them. It's just something else to speak about that is slightly different. This is something wrong with the number.
Bruno, can I just ask why the bottom row, the total business revenue expenditure, why is that not the sum of the rows above? So in the first one, you've got actual year to date 408.22, so that makes 12.22.
I don't know what I've done with the bottom thing. I just noticed it. Apologies, because I can see that the variance is much higher than the 1.8 that is there. Apologies. So we actually spent today only 1.2 out of a much higher budget of, that's implied that I can do it by heart, 6 million roughly. So that means the difference is more like 4.8. But as you can see anyway, the GovCo is the part that is actually making the majority of the variance. So that's the reason why you have £4 million worth of variance there. So what we done in the forecast, we did actually reduce the amount of funds that we are expecting GovCo to be able to support us with the investment in the future months, in the last period of the program. And so then we are hoping to spend around 4.5 million now, until the end of the contract with GovCo, that is December. Of course, as you all know, these funds are going to come back to CPCA, and we will work together to find anything that we could consider has similar remits that we would like to use inside these funds for. They are not lost money or lost opportunity. We just need to find a new opportunity for them.
Bruno,
Tell me.
Can I ask for a copy of that table updated with the correct totals to be circulated subsequently to members?
Yes, of course, no worries.
Thank you.
Apologies for the error. At the bottom of it here, you can see what has not been approved yet. So we have some costs from the College of West Anglia Net Zero program that we will actually was spent that we need to that it was approved. Likewise, so these are the new things that they just come in. And then at the bottom here, you will have this is the plan for the recycle funds. As you can see, this has been updated to taking in account the activities that we have this, couple of 6 months ago. So we agreed that we will use the recycle revenue to improve, to strengthen the team, the business team, and get more resources. So as you can see, the majority of what is remaining within the port is actually the capital side, while the revenue side, there is very little left. So the commitment is for as you can see, for the 3 years from 2024-25 to 26-27, and then it's building up a bit more again. Likewise, Enterprise Zone has, you can see, has followed the same pattern. So as you can see, 25-26, we will have very little in at this, because we have adjusted to ensure that all the decisions that was making by the board to support the fulfillment of more stuff through the business is visible. But you can see we still going forward in the next couple of years, going back and walk back, go back to healthier position. So always helpful, try to move forward. The Enterprise Zone in general is performing very well in Alconbury and a bit less in other areas, but anyway, still a worthy activity. That's everything. Again, apologies for the error.
Bruno, thank you. Just to confirm, is there anything from that you've shared there that you think is of significant importance for Business Board to be a bit aware of?
To be honest, is very in line with what we have discussed in the previous period.
Yep.
The lion's share of all these reports is GrowthCo and the activity, especially from the capital side. But we also are very aware that that we don't want to invest in opportunities that are not worthy just for the sake of get money out of the door. I'm very, we are keen to find the right opportunity for these. We are behind, but it's not, I had preferred not to use it, that I use it badly.
It's really, really important for us, obviously, to be kind of clear in terms of, I think Rob's got his hand up, so maybe I'll let Rob explain first of all. Rob, do you want to jump in?
Sure. It was just to add to what Bruno was saying, really. It is always preferable that we don't spend if we don't have good things to spend it on. But I think the key point for the board here is what are we going to do instead? What are you going to do instead, I should say. You'll see from the table further down, there's a similar amount, about £3 million of capital unallocated from recycled funds, and another 3 million from this underspend and the capital funds invested through GrowthWorks. I think the question for the business board is how can that best be used to deliver the strategic outcomes the board wishes to deliver over the next 3 to 5 years. It's not a huge amount of money, particularly considering that which the board had access to previously with the local growth funds that hadn't been replicated. I know there's discussion as part of the medium-term financial plan cycle with the CA board, what is happening in that area with the CA more widely. But certainly, is there a need for, with the pipeline that's being developed by the GrowthCo that obviously hasn't drawn down that amount of funding, is that the right way? Does that programme want to be continued with this underspend? Or are there other things that the business board think is a priority for delivery in that area?
Thank you, Rob. And I think that does link into the timings of as I've alluded to, in terms of the business board conversations. Because there are broader opportunities, whether it's strategically what we might choose to be the catalyst to bid for versus the opportunities that are being presented. And I think, as we've discussed before, we want to make sure that we are, where possible, aligning with as many of the strategic priorities as possible, and probably as part of that, refining our measure of what we think has the most impact and what impact is. But I'm really mindful, and certainly Richard has alluded to that earlier on today, that part of our work in the changing landscape is about looking for the opportunities that we need to put together a cohesive plan to present to government to bid for, as well as the respond to opportunities based on what may be presented to us with that limited pot. So I'm hoping as the next month, 6 weeks refines, we'll have an opportunity to really refine down that somewhat in terms of what we're actually looking as our priorities to be. I guess I asked the question in terms of anything that was presented there that we should be mindful of, because the ERDF is a slightly different beast, but we obviously want to be avoiding an opportunity where any funding is lost or handed back based on capacity or opportunity more than anything else. Does anybody else have any questions for Bruna on the summary? No. Okay. So other than an action point to get an updated version shared with members, for this section, we're only required to note the financial position as it stands. So if everyone's happy to note what's been shared with us today, there are no other recommendations or access points at this point.
I don't know if you can see me, Al, but
I'm sorry, Richard.
I couldn't find a way of putting my hand up. I'm having all sorts of IT issues at the moment. But I was just going to add to what Rob Emery said, because I think it was quite an important point, which was the medium-term financial plan for the combined authority moving forward, because there is, there's about 75 million worth of capital in there and 15 million worth of revenue, and part of the proposals, and they are only proposals at the moment, so things could change as we all well know with politics, but there is a proposal in there for a strategic growth fund, and that the 6 million or so that Steve's been very mindful of at the moment has always been in the back of his mind, I think, to start using that to oil the wheels of potential propositions and collaborations in and around the patch, that we think as a business board are really important. But if that does grow, to a strategic growth fund of around 18 or 24 million, then that does start to become slightly more significant. So I think that's quite important for the business board to be aware of moving forwards. And probably one of the things I didn't mention in my update, but you will be aware of, is the Greater Manchester have just done another deal with Legal and General and Bruntwood in relation to their sort of investment fund work, using pension funds and so on and so forth. So if we were to go down that route as well, that potentially could be quite significant in terms of the scale of things that the combined authority does moving forwards. So I think this report does feel a little bit sort of, this budget feels a little bit sort of a bit too day to day, and not enough of a narrative underpinning it really. But actually, moving forwards, things are looking a little bit more at scale than this budget report probably does credit to.
Richard, thank you for adding that in. I was really mindful, and I have had an opportunity as business board chair to have a conversation with officers to talk through the medium-term financial plan, which once it's been through the main board there'll be a window of opportunity for business board members like other members to have a conversation around. So I chose, for the right reasons, not to mention it before it goes into that public space. But you're absolutely right. I won't mention numbers, but within the context of that growth fund, there are opportunities for how best that can be used. And that's a conversation we need to have once we've got clarity on what's being proposed. And I think just for broader awareness, Richard and I have been meeting and trying to meet on a regular basis to talk about opportunities, and there are models being adopted by other combined authorities linking into how we can access finance and investment that potentially then unlock projects at greater scale. I think that's probably the fairest way of saying it, Richard, that don't really feature as yet on this summary we've talked about today. but have the potential to be quite significant in contrast to the numbers we're looking at here. But I think time-wise, end of the month, the medium-term financial plan should then be in a position where we'll be able to bring that as a conversation piece to the business board as in parallel to other stakeholders reviewing on it. Okay, I don't see another hands up. Thank you, Bruna, for your report and for other feedback on that. We have noted the figures as they stand today, so I'm going to move on to item 3.2. Which we've already dabbled in slightly, but we can now have a little bit more detail from Steve. Richard, if you need to ask or contribute any further, please feel free to do a YMCA on screen, and I will keep an eye out for it if you can't find the hands up. So we're going to move to GrowthWorks management update to year 3, quarter 11. And Steve, you're going to lead on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Good afternoon, board members. Hopefully you can hear me. So this is the quarter 11. It's the penultimate quarter of the whole programme. The board last had an update in July, and that was referenced to quarter 9. So effectively, the figures you're seeing today have essentially jumped as 2 quarters worth of figures from the last report. The report went to Skills Committee last Monday. Quite a robust debate at Skills Committee, mainly around the apprenticeships, as you would imagine, being their primary interest, but quite a bit around, obviously the exit planning and the sort of what next, particularly in relation to skills brokerage beyond the end of the year. So the report comprises 2 parts really: the performance update of the quarter, and then a bit about the exit plan. In terms of the performance report, it covers in 3.1 the 3 key contract outcomes. These are the 3 indicators which are the contractor's main target in their contract. There are a number of other indicators that all sit underneath this, and of course that's what builds the huge report that you see at Appendix 1, where there are multiple other aspects of reporting for interest. But as of the end of September, the jobs tally was 6,247.5 jobs attributed to the programme. That's actually now exceeding the overall target by 761. So actually, performance turnaround in this 3rd year. Obviously, they have less hindrance, shall we say, compared to the first 2 years of the programme, where we've had, Brexit and COVID and all the other things to kind of get in the way. The other thing that they've been doing as well, of course, from a performance point of view, going towards the end, is they're now starting to follow up closely and close out some of the activity. Whereas, of course, they were doing a bit of lead generation at the same time as delivery through the rest of the period. So that's why we're seeing some quite good numbers in terms of growth coaching and inward investment. And then obviously concern, as the Skills Committee had referenced, learning outcomes, skills learning outcomes and skills apprenticeships, still behind target, but a good turnaround in terms of performance in the quarter for those. 240 apprenticeships added in the month of September is the biggest addition in any single month of the programme. And that's attributed mainly to the reach out to the market that skills team are doing. And they've engaged Golly Slater in helping them with their marketing and engagement. And I think we'll see that maintained to the end of the programme. That's the agreement and the plan there on skills. In terms of growth coaching, as I've already said, business development activity has been stopped off there, and they're closing out working with all the companies that are in the pipeline. And to date, they've worked with 841 companies, and obviously they're completing as many of those coaching journeys now in the period as they can to the end of the programme. Inward Investment Service has continued to do very well. They've been doing a verification exercise with DBT as we move towards the end of the programme, evidencing for them all the successes that are being accounted by DBT as well, particularly in the pipeline for this year. So that's attributed a few more jobs into their particular work stream. And other things I'll highlight, the panel on equity. So 9 companies, equity started late, as the board knows, 9 awarded today. The panel is still operating. It sat last week and it will sit again next week, and likely to make a few more investments. But as has been reported through Bruner's finance report, if that equity, that capital funding allocated for equity investment doesn't get utilised, we won't be just shoveling the money out to any investments. They've got to be quality. They've got to meet the criteria. So if the funding is unspent, it will remain in the business board's pot. And as Richard and Rob have helpfully outlined, it can be reused for other strategic purposes that the board would want to pursue. The GrowthWorks Net Promoter Score, so the measure of quality and satisfaction, the survey this quarter came out as good. That's better than the previous quarter, so up a bit, but it's still a very low response rate from the number of companies going in. So only 27 responses from 773 companies messaged who took part in the service during the quarter. So we are planning to run one more Net Promoter Score survey, but we're going to do it across the whole programme, so not just the companies who participate in this last quarter. We're going to message all of the companies who've participated throughout the programme with a fairly strong email saying this is sort of your last chance to give us some qualitative feedback about what the service has done and what could be done next in terms of our work going forward to support business. So that's the performance part of the report. In terms of the exit plan, as we move to closure, the exit plan has been devised. It's appended to the report. We've agreed it after a bit of iteration with the contractor. We're now having weekly meetings on the exit plan to track progress and milestones. The key parts of the plan you'll see broken down very clearly. People is a big component of it and the most important component. As I think it was Mike Hurd mentioned, we've already enacted some parts of that early. So the Growth Hub team have been transferred into the combined authority as of the 1st of November. That's successfully went through. And we're working with the skills team to look at the team of people who will be transferring in on the 1st of January to continue with the skills brokerage funded by Shared Prosperity. The other parts of the exit plan, so information, there's an awful lot, as you can imagine, a 3-year programme, a lot of information to share, transfer, and we're working through what that looks like, size, shape, scope. Data and our CRM HubSpot mercifully belongs to us and they're operating on our licenses. So we have all the CRM, all the pipelines, all the information, transactions and other information for analysis and continued work coming across. All the audit material that goes with all the grants and everything else is being transferred at the end via a transfer process. And then any assets, we're just discussing the websites. Obviously, all IP and websites belong to CPCA, but we need to just agree whether we want to continue with those and particularly pick up any licenses for any parts of those things that sit behind the activity. For example, Locate Cambridge portal. The Star Hub, which is the skills portal, obviously has been funded by ESF and will continue. And we will be looking to pick that up in the skills work beyond the end of December as a continuing tool for our use. Communications. We're just drawing up a mini communications plan to agree with the contractor, but quite simply, that's a very high level, get our messages straight. We've already had to agree some, for example, the Growth Hub transferring to us. We want to obviously have a continuity of messages to business that it's still open, you can still get advice. And then finally, just the pure exit governance and the financial aspects of closeout with the contract. Obviously, the plan is appended to the report. It's quite big, so I apologise for that. But if you zoom it on your screen, you can actually see all the various details of activity that we propose to do. One final thing we will be undertaking is a further a closure report. We will be seeking from the contractor, and then adding our own aspects to a full comprehensive closure report, but then an impact evaluation of all the outcomes as derived as well. And actually, we've got already to circulate to the business board. It wasn't ready last week, so I couldn't mention it at the skills committee, but it's coming in the last few days, is the final version of the ERDF summative assessment. So that's the evaluation, that's the deep dive evaluation that's gone on for all the businesses that took advantage of the ERDF grants as part of their growth coaching journey. So we'll be sharing that to the business board over the coming week or so. And that's, I'll stop there and happily take any questions.
Thanks, Steve. I see Andy's hand is straight up, so over to you, Andy.
Steve, it'd be really good to either do a visit of the business board or perhaps invite one or two of the firms in that have experienced the growth work service, so just to bring it to life a bit, because the numbers are all very well and it's impressive in terms of how they've done against the targets, but I'd love to hear the story of what happened in, you know, a manufacturing firm in the region that went through the coaching service, what benefit they got, and also what we can learn for interventions in the future. And I'm unconscious you get case studies and it's a very small sample, but I think some examples would really help with this.
Yeah, Andy, I think that's an excellent idea, and we've been talking about having a bit of a wrap-up session sometime in January. Actually, put together call it an event, but really a bit of a wrap-up meeting, sharing learning points, so the contractor can say a bit about what they did. But we could bring, I think it would be great if we could bring some companies along to that. In fact, we could broaden it. It could be companies that did a coaching journey, it could be a company that took advantage of the equity service or a grant, and it could actually be a company that availed of the skills service and took on some apprentices or took on a training plan, so to speak. So I think or maybe if we're lucky, one that did it all. So we could certainly do that. I don't think that's an issue to do that. In fact, I think it'd be really good.
Thank you, Steve. I think it's Mike next.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Good presentation as always. With respect to the new team that will be recruited to add to the team at the combined authority, what's the sort of timing of that, and the sort of when are the job descriptions being done, that type of thing?
So so the 6 roles in the new economy team picks up some of the sector work, trade and investment work, innovation work. Those job descriptions are formalising now and will be going into the marketplace, as Richard's already indicated, to kick that off. The Growth Hub as a team have transferred as 4 individuals, but we have in the agreed plan that you guys agreed back in July, funding to add to their number from April. So we will, between now and April, we will work up the what's the focus of additional advisors. Some of that's contingent on the DBT grant being confirmed for Growth Hub activity again next year. So, you know, we may have to adjudge what level of funding we've got once we know about that. But yeah, so there'll be a chance between now and April to input on what is the focus of it, whether it's going to be startup, whether it's going to be social enterprise, whether it's going to be other foundational sectors or other things themes that we're not touching, export or something like that. So yeah, but would welcome input from any of the board members as we move towards that. And we'll be doing it collaboratively with our local authority partners under the Team Cambridgeshire sort of approach as well. So probably quite a lot of interest to try and cover, actually.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Claire?
Yes, I just wanted to pick up on a few things and add to them that Steve said, and also just say hello, because it's my first business board, and I've I think 6 weeks in now to the assistant director for skills. So thank you very much for inviting me. There was just a few things to add, I think, is from a skills perspective, which I thought were interesting from the report. I mean, on the apprenticeship front, you know, looking back last year, I think 13.1% drop in SME take-up of apprenticeships. So any improvement that we're getting is against that kind of national dynamic is really good to see, although it's still very difficult. There's just two very brief things in terms of coming to this very fresh and just thinking, you know, what the future might look like. And I think the first thing in terms of bringing it in-house is what struck me was that the key relationships that we needed in terms of brokerage were sitting outside, you know, our group, and the potential now to actually work with employers and work with others and build those relationships in a more broader way that we can then get a halo effect from, I think is really important. And the second thing, and Stephen and I have talked about this, is I think that for me, the temptation, because things are funded in particular pots, is to think of everything as a program. Whereas when I look at brokerage, it seems to me that's the interface. It's the enabler. And there's so many things that can sit behind it that aren't necessarily funded by one pot or another, but that's the critical place where we interface with employers, and we kind of, you know, are able to draw on all of the things behind us that are ways that we can help people with skills or with business through that brokerage service. So I was very struck when I first arrived how it kind of felt a bit like a program, slightly separate, whereas now bringing it in-house, I think we can treat it much more like that broad enabler, that interface with business. And so Steve and I have talked about this, and we think this is a much bigger, bolder idea and more sustainable than thinking of it as a funded stream from a particular piece of government funding. So I think the future looks really, really interesting.
Thank you for that summary, and absolutely a welcome to the meeting, and I look forward to many more meetings, I hope. One of the things I think that we've kind of touched on there was with that focus on, should we say, learning the lessons, the positives and the successes, and also the areas for development from GrowthWorks and bringing them in-house. There is an option to be more focused, and you touched on a really important strand, because particularly with skills, there is a bit of a Venn diagram from different providers, whether it's the LSIP, different activities that we've seen before, in making sure that we're not duplicating or competing with other provision, but we're making sure that we bring people along to one cohesive plan that has bigger impact. So I'm quite reassured to hear you saying that, because I do think it's a point about the combined authority being in a better position to be that kind of facilitator and enabler where possible on some of these projects. The bit I was going to just dovetail back to you, Steve, was within these reports, we tend to be focused on the metrics of how we've performed against benchmarks. In many regards, the bigger question moving forward is what aspects, what strands have we learnt lessons from, and which aspects do we think are most relevant to lift and try to not only replicate but develop within the combined authority, and which strands are ones that are perhaps worthy of a pause and a park and a reflect.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And we obviously had the report we had done earlier by Mike Spicer and Glenn Athy, which helped frame some of those points, you know, which parts of the service have actually been very, very beneficial or not. But actually, as I say, the closure report for the whole thing, the closure report does actually ask for all of those kind of inputs around what worked well, what didn't, and the lessons that can be driven from it or derived from it. So we'll be doing all that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, for this agenda item, like most today, it is a requirement just for simply us to note the report, unless there are any recommendations that are being raised. But I feel like perhaps the next time we discuss this topic, we'll be in a better position, perhaps to close the loop on that one. So thank you, Steve, on that one, and thank you for your insights, Claire, as well. Shall we move to item 3.3, if there are no other hands, which is a University of Peterborough update? Jim, I know you are with us, waiting patiently, sir, so I'm going to hand over to you for an update on Peterborough.
Thanks, Al. What I wanted to say to start with, just in terms of logistics here, I can talk to the paper or I can put it up on the screen like Bruna and walk me through it. So what is your preferred way of working?
I'm going to try and encourage on an ongoing basis where possible to share it, because it allows everybody to keep in sync with whatever points you're raising. But I'm also minding that we do have external viewers who are watching this, and it helps sometimes to have the information on screen as well. So if you're able to, Jim, please do.
The caveat is I've got someone in the team who's about to put it up on the screen for me.
Well, if you are able, great. And
I saw Bruna trying to increase fonts and things like that. So I thought I've got George is going to try and put it on the screen for me. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll talk to it. But in the meantime, George is trying to do that for me.
To be fair, your report is fairly much a textual summary rather than any particular charts and graphs. But I think if it's just a case of drawing to any specifics you want to cover.
Yeah, well, George will help me to scroll through it. But what I wanted to say at the start was that in terms of an economic regeneration project, this really does hit all of the bells. You know, we talk in the economic regeneration world of the three pillars of people, business and place. And here we have a project which addresses a higher education cold spot in Peterborough. It has the opportunity to support local businesses address talent and skills gaps, and it also offers opportunity for Peterborough to reposition itself as a city, as a university city, looking forward and attracting new investment to the city. So I think in that sense it's a fantastic project to be involved in, and congratulations to those who worked on this before me and had the foresight to put the business plans together and source the funding for it. So what I've done today is pull together a paper that sort of takes us through if you can scroll to the next page, George, describes the three phases of the project. The delivery of the university building itself, phase one, in September last year. I want to say a little bit more about the Innovation and Research Centre, because I know the Business Board was influential in securing the funding to enable that to happen. The building is now complete on 3 floors on the campus. The ground floor is currently being fitted out by the university itself through funding it received from the Office for Students to put in what is called an extended reality suite on the ground floor. And the purpose of that is to give as real life practical learning experience to the students as we can. So you get the opportunities there when it's ready to almost be in the environment we're in an operating theatre if you're doing one of the nursing courses, and there are other ways of developing that going forward to make it particular to particular courses that are being taught. So a very exciting opportunity as we move forward to exploit that. The challenge remains of finding research and development, research and innovation-led companies to occupy the rest of the space. As the Business Board will know, Photocentric was unable to progress its partnership with us, and we have been reaching out to other organisations to bring those in the space there. So we're currently negotiating with one organisation to take a full floor, and also with 2 or 3 smaller organisations to go into the floor that will be split up into units for smaller businesses. Obviously, for reasons of commercial confidentiality in a public meeting, I can't go into the detail on those, but happy to keep members informed as we move forward. But that's obviously a key aim of the team, to see that space occupied as quickly as we possibly can, but to see it occupied in a way that remains aligned to the purposes for which we created the building in the first place. So we don't want to get to a situation where we just take a business that can afford to pay the rent. We want to be able to attract a research and development-led businesses into that space. Phase 3 is currently under construction and on budget and on time to be completed by July next year at a total cost of some £32 million. So in total over those 3 phases, there's something like £80 million being secured for this investment in Peterborough. So that's great credit to the partners who have worked together to secure that money. Further development of the campus will focus on the attraction of a major research and development institution, business or organisation to sit alongside the university. And again, what we are looking to do there in partnership with Peterborough City Council and with the ARU Peterborough itself is to attract a major research and development facility, which in my words is fully aligned to the university moving forward, rather than simply an institution which shares campus space. So we need to look for that alignment with the university, and then it can help the university to grow. Now, to do that, we need to secure additional land resource in that area, and that will be the subject of an outline planning application, which we will take forward with Peterborough City Council. In the meantime, as part of Peterborough City Council's local plan review, we've recorded our continuing interest in the development of that site as a partnership. So that has been marked. The appendix contains a great deal of detail on what I would describe the outstanding impact that the university has had in its first year. But the message here today is about the development of the campus continuing at pace and in line with the objectives that were set out in the original business plans. The key message that I want to get across to the board today, and I'll walk you through the appendix in a moment or two, but the key message is that the university is reaching out to business organisations and to local businesses. Strong business linkages are and will remain an essential element in the university's growth plan. Curriculum development, supporting local business needs, attracting business clusters to the campus. And the question I would want to pose and talk through with business board members is, how does the business board and its individual members work collectively and individually to support the university and even further in the realisation of these growth ambitions? But the board has played a fantastic part in getting the university to where it is just now. But what more can we do in terms of the business board's influence and the individual members' influence in furthering that as we move forward? If we quickly can jump to the appendix, then I can take you through. I think it's attached as a separate document, George.
Yeah, just 2 seconds. I should get it up.
Thank you.
Jim, perhaps we could just have the conversation in terms of business boards and how we can support whilst that appendix is coming up.
Yeah.
I'm really conscious one part is about visibility and developing the right tenants that can support that phase 2 process.
Yes.
You and I are meeting at the university, I think, in about 10 days' time for a conversation there.
Yes.
And it is really important that we can figure a way, perhaps how we best package and summarise what that offer is from the university for that phase 2 site for prospective partners as well as tenants, and how that can be articulated to business board members so that they can share that through their own channels as well. Maybe we need to have a separate conversation or presentation to encapsulate that in a way that allows business board members to articulate that clearly to people that they know that would have good alignment, perhaps moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I think that's something that we should aim to do, Al. As you said, you and I can kick that off in our conversations with Ross when we meet him in 10 days' time or so to do that. And I think the other thing that I'm sure Ross would be more than up for would be either attending or hosting, a business board meeting or a further dialogue with individual business board members who feel that they might have more to contribute than others to that debate and discussion moving forward. Because I've not, since I've arrived, Ross has been very open about his intent to open the campus to partners and the organisations that can support his ambitions.
I think we all know there's an opportunity, but perhaps if we were all asked to explain in 5 minutes what we thought was the specific requirements, opportunities at the university now, we'd all have a slightly different, slightly woollier version of where
Yeah.
those priorities are. And in the same way as I've worked with them originally in some of the course provision, given the breadth of experience, there may be other opportunities to shape putting on the radar course provision for the future that would be very welcome for employers across the region. I see Rebecca and Mike have their hands up, so I'm going to jump across there if I may. Rebecca?
Thanks, Al. Perhaps, Jim, could you just put a bit more colour on the phase 2 sort of timeline and business side? You know, in line with what we've just been talking about, and in fact what both you and Al have said, I do feel the university reaches out to businesses, but that bit that you just talked about, i.e. phase 2 is almost ready and we're looking for businesses, I feel like I've heard it quite a lot over the last few meetings, and I'm not clear on whether the building has been ready and so we've been looking for businesses and now it's fitted out, but there is no opportunity for them to move in yet, or whether they should have already moved in and we're running a bit late and we should be worrying about this now, because the amount of press that the university has had because of a successful first year, it's won lots of awards, it's got a very high profile within the city, and I'm just not clear on whether this is something that should have happened by now, or it shouldn't happen. We're just projecting forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And my take on it is that we had a building that was completed about 6 months or so ago now. It had originally been developed with the intention of Photocentric going in there and taking a substantial part of the space. That isn't happening for Photocentric's own business reasons now. We then reached out to another organisation who were interested in taking the space, and it's only in the last few weeks that they've said that they're not able to take the space there now. So that leaves us making a further push around what we do with that space and how we best see it occupied. And as I said to you, we are talking to another particular organisation only in the last week or so about taking one of the floors there. There are 2 or 3 smaller businesses who have expressed a real interest in taking what we've called the innovation space on one of the floors where we convert the 5,000 or square foot or so of floor space into smaller units. So that's real interest in that. And in terms of how we organise that and how we make that happen within a specific period of time, there is an intention to look at potentially ARU Peterborough taking a head lease on the whole building, and the initial conversations around that were based on the tenant who was in the middle of those 3 that I described taking the space. So we just need to push it a bit more further to see if that's going to fall into place. So we know the direction we're heading, Rebecca. It's just about balancing all the different. I'm not fearful at this stage that we're not going to be able to fill it. I'm just juggling the balls to make sure that we fill it in the best possible way that falls in line with ARU's interests, our own interests, and the potential tenants' interests.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, you.
Yes, thanks, James. One very practical question is, who do we send or who do we introduce companies to? Because I sent one through to the university, but I hadn't anything back. Is it to yourselves or to Savills if you got an interesting company for Peterborough?
Savills have been employed by us employed by, strictly speaking, by Propco 2, the joint venture company that's been set up to market the building. So you can put inquiries through them. If there are inquiries that you can bring them to me direct. It's whatever's easier for yourself if you're aware of businesses that.
Yeah, no, it's just we're not adding any value if we just direct them to Savills, if you like. So that's why I sent it to Tom Williamson, but maybe he's not the right person. I'll direct it to you.
Tom certainly, as part of the university team, would make sure that the right people are looking at, and they've got a research and investment development organisation that's part of ARU, the wider ARU, that they're now getting involved in the project moving forward.
All right, okay. Our second question was, great, they've won awards and won funding. How's the actual academic side going in terms of student numbers? And it's obviously very difficult with a cold zone for HE, but how's that side going?
Yeah, that's a very good question, mate. And what I'm doing at the moment, what I haven't said in the report, but I can provide more detail as it develops, as we are talking to Ross Renton and his team about the metrics that we want to gather around the project, and they were based on, you know, the themes of supporting access to higher education, a theme around student experience and employability, a theme around local engagement, and a theme about wider the impact of the university on wider economic activity in Peterborough. Now, you know, in terms of numbers, I think that the student numbers is quite a raw statistic to look at, and what we're trying to do is capture, you know, where are the students coming from, measure retention, measure progression, and, you know, so how many are coming in, how many are staying, where are they coming from, where are they going to, and capture those figures moving forward. And I would hope in the time we get round to the next business board meeting that I'm able to report on that in more detail. At the moment, as I say, it's just part of the ongoing negotiation and discussions with Ross to get to a series of metrics that all sides are happy with.
Sure, because I think it shouldn't be underestimated just how difficult it is to launch a new university in an area. Yeah. So I hope these things aren't sugar-coated by just saying, well, they've won an award or done that sort of thing, because there might well be more ways we can help them as an institution.
Yeah, no, I fully accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Jim. And I've remembered to turn my microphone back on now, so there we go. That's really helpful. We did have one of our meetings earlier this year, I think it was, or the back end of last year at the university. And there may be a good opportunity to have another one of our meetings next year, actually at the university, which gives us an opportunity to have an update on some of those questions that Mike's raised there. And I think it is really important, Rebecca's question about understanding the timings. The model has changed from the original plan with the anchor tenant. And I think for us to be really clear on who to refer to, but specifically what is space that's still potentially open for access for anybody who's interested, and have a clear bit of messaging pack or deck for each of the members of the business board would be really helpful, so that we can help support that activity for spreading the word as well.
Well, I will pick that up, Alan. Perhaps when you and I get round the table with Ross in 10 days' time, we can pursue the idea of a meeting and look at dates for that.
Absolutely. Be happy to. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions while we're here? You'll be shocked to hear that this agenda item is just a recommendation for us just to note what's been shared, unless there's any other suggestions or recommendations. So I think we're in good shape, which means we arrive at the home straight, which is the business.
Oh, sorry, has Andy got a question? I just see Andy's hand up.
Oh, I do apologise, Andy.
Yeah, sorry, I was slow with my hand. It was just, Jim, the other thing we'd help to understand is something about the financial model of the university and how it's doing versus, I mean, it's partly linked to the students, but versus the projections. I'm not, like, I was trying to remember what the break even was in terms of numbers of students roughly in the place. Right. But understanding some of that would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'd probably need to go and get that answer for you, Andy, which I'm happy to do, and come back to you with that.
Great.
Thank you, Andy, and for Jim. So maybe that could just be an action that you could take away, Jim, and share.
Yeah.
We'll bring back to the next update. If we move to item 4.1 forward plan, you'll see on page 160 of your pack today, there's a draft forward plan for our meeting on the 15th of January. Obviously, this is an opportunity if anyone has any thoughts, any items missing, to be mindful and share those with Domenico, so we can have a look and start planning not just January, but the subsequent months' meetings. I hope when we have our hopefully planned meeting in December to meet with new business board members and talk about a few of those topics. That will give us a chance to refine a bit more for the year ahead. Mayor Johnson?
Yeah, Al, just to come in on something that I've been sort of bumbling away kind of, which does link up with actually something Claire will know about this. In the combined authority, there is a desire to develop a sort of a cultural strategy, both, you know, a narrative of how that could be good in terms of developing a sense of place and identity for their area, but also Richard referred to this in the meeting with UK Creative. I, off the top of my head, I'm not sure where we are in terms of bringing the sort of cultural strategy to the board, but I'd be quite keen to sort of explore that maybe with Richard and indeed the members of the policy team about developing the cultural strategy and how that might reflect in working with a business board in the near future. And that's something that should be on the forward plan.
Thank you, and noted. And certainly if there's an opportunity even for an advanced presentation, or just perhaps to frame and shape what that might look like that you wanted to bring to January meeting, or March being the next day, early March, but either of those ones.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm conscious that Richard's probably still, well, I know he's recovering, and maybe Claire, I can see you nodding, and the thing is, it was something if I would appreciate if we could have that. I don't know if you want to make a comment, Richard, regarding that.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? My
Yep.
IT's playing up slightly. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, what came out of the conversations you've already had, Nick, is, you know, that a lot of work's already been done to map the cluster and to really get underneath some of the issues, the post-COVID changes as well. So I think we're in a really good place in relation to that. I think we've got some work to do to actually get to a strategy, but it might be worth you know, getting into that sort of mindset of co-design, co-development with the business board on this one. So I think bringing that early would be really helpful, because then I think we would get more value out of the business board members and the views of the business board members in terms of formulating that strategy. So it's a really good call, and really supportive of that, and we can do that.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you for raising, and I'll leave it with officers to decide on when the most appropriate meeting time is for that to be added to the forward plan.
Can I just add into that
Yes,
because I've been doing some work with Anglia Ruskin in Cambridge, and there's been a lot of work started with the helping freelancers out in terms of the creative side, and also helping ARU graduates in creating creative businesses, which would be good to engage with them in terms of the creative cluster and the strategy going forward.
Thanks, Mike. Back to you, Mayor.
It's just to back up what Mike's just said. Sitting down, I mean, I have the real joy of meeting lots of people. I'm often sent there by officers, or they invite me to go and meet them to talk about businesses or charities in the local area. But I have to say, when I sat down with UK Creative, their approach to kind of how things have changed post-COVID, and particularly with the very businesses Mike's talking about, I can only say that they were kind of biting my hand off to say, we want to come here, we want to do more work, and, you know, anything. And interestingly, and I did bring this up for the skills committee, that they were particularly interested in Peterborough as a sort of possibly, you know, as an area that they could see a lot of possibility of development, and indeed a real focus. I'm sure you'll want to hear this out, the digital economy. I know I've sort of began making some sort of connections with yourself, knocking on from that, Al. But yeah, so I'm grateful that that's been received as a suggestion. Thank you, Richard, for taking that on and teeing up some of these discussions, and I look forward to coming back to the business board sooner rather than later. I just absolutely recognise what Mike was saying.
Thank you. Good to hear. Excellent. Well, I appreciate all the suggestions and contributions, and as always, if anything else crops up, we can feed back to Domenico for any other suggestions for amendments to the forward plan. I'm sure that will shape considerably in the months to come. And on that point, we have reached the end of the meeting, and it just leaves me to say thank you everybody for your contributions to Sports Day. Thank you for those listening in, and to remind you that the next formal meeting of the business board is on Monday the 15th of January 2024. Seems a bit early to wish you all a happy Christmas, but we will hopefully be meeting before that as a board to look at strategic planning with some of our new members who'll be joining us before then. Thank you again to all officers for your time and efforts preparing the reports today. As always, it's very much appreciated.